Manchester City travelled to St James's Park to take on Newcastle United. Will it be another disappointing result for Newcastle United, or can they rise to the challenge? Yes, Geordies, welcome back to another match preview. The international break is over till next year, thank God, and we do welcome Manchester City to St James's Park 5:30 this Saturday. So in this video, I'm going to tell you if Newcastle United can rise to the occasion, how they can beat Manchester City, and we're also going to look at why Manchester City have hit form. I want to start by saying this. These are the types of games where we see Newcastle United rise to the occasions, especially under the lights at St James's Park. It's even snowing out there. Manchester City at St James's Park, that's the last place they want to be, 5:30 on a Saturday. But being totally honest, if there's ever a time to play Newcastle United, it's probably now. So Manchester City will be coming at St James's Park, relishing the opportunity. It's a massive game for them because they need to start catching Arsenal. They can't afford to drop any points, but neither can Newcastle United. 7 points off the top four. Now, we haven't won away from home all season, and all of our victories have come at home in the Premier League. City come into this in big form. Newcastle United, well, not so much. But that international break came at a massive, crucial time for Newcastle United because they're coming into this game after 2 straight 3-1 defeats. And this is how our Premier League results look this season. Let's be brutally honest about it. It doesn't look great. And statistically, it's a poorest start Eddie Howe in any season since 2017-18 season when he was in charge of Bournemouth. The highest ranked team Newcastle United have beaten this season is 15th place Fulham. Now, we have scored in every single home Premier League game this season. And you just know when City come to town, form goes out the window. It's all about effort, energy, bravery, and stopping Manchester City in their rhythm. Easier said than done. Now, do Newcastle United actually have a good record against Manchester City, or is it all just a myth? Well, I'm sorry to tell you guys, Newcastle United have just won 1 in their last 35 Premier League meetings with Manchester City, with drew 6 and lost 28. That one victory came when Rafa Benitez was in charge in 2019. Manchester City have won 12 Premier League away games against Newcastle United, their joint most away victories against an opponent in the competition with Everton. And on top of that, Manchester City have scored in each of their last 33 Premier League games against Newcastle United. And Manchester City do come in this in good form. They've only lost 1 of their last 15 games in all competitions, including a draw against Arsenal. They beat Liverpool, beat Bournemouth, beat Dortmund, beat Manchester United, and it feels to me like Manchester City are starting to hit form. We will get on to Newcastle very shortly, but I want to talk about what's changed in Manchester City since last season. Has Pep Guardiola adapted these and tweaked these tactics and system to get the best out of the profile of players that he has? Do Manchester City still dominate possession? Do they still circulate the ball as much as they used to? Do they still use their fullbacks as flying fullbacks? Well, there has been a tweak and a change, and something that Newcastle United need to look out for, because if we don't watch out for this one thing, Manchester City are going to pull Newcastle United apart. So what can you expect from Manchester City? Well, they do still use that positional play and possession game. They still dominate possession using patterns of movement, short little triangles to control the tempo. But what's changed specifically is the quicker in transitions. There's more emphasis on being direct and efficient in transitions. Let's talk about the one most obvious thing that Manchester City have brought in this season to last season, before we look at the numbers and statistics, is athleticism. They were so leggy in midfield last season that teams were just exploiting them in transitions. Manchester City was so vulnerable in transitions last season. Therefore, they were getting caught out time and time and time again, and that's why they were getting beaten and dropping points. The majority of games, let's be honest. Manchester City last season were really leggy all over the pitch, but now they've brought that energy, that hunger, that work rate off the ball to win the ball back as quickly as possible. That is one of the most key components to the way Pep Guardiola and Manchester City play. In fact, this season, City have covered the most ground than any other side in the Premier League. So we're all used to Manchester City keeping the ball, keeping everything neat and tidy, but they're aggressive, they're hungry, they're physical now off the ball. And that is the most important thing that has changed from last season. Systematically, Pep Guardiola has also adapted his system to evolve with the game. Let's just quickly talk about the profile of players that have changed from last season. Nico O'Reilly and Mateus Nunes have added some physicality and athleticism to the fullback positions. Tijani Reinders, what a name, has added legs to Manchester City's midfield, while Nico Gonzalez has taken over the mantle that has been left vacant by Rodri. Phil Foden, Bernardo Silva worked their tails off and looked back to their best. And up front, they're devastating. They're athletic, quick, powerful. Players like Erling Haaland, Jeremy Doku, Savinho, Oscar Bob have all added energy that was missing last season. So Manchester City have always been lauded for their ability to keep possession, being comfortable in tight spaces, creating little patterns of play, little triangles to break through lines. But the key component to Manchester City's success is that ability to work hard in and out of possession, cover a large proportion of the pitch. That has been their backbone since Pep Guardiola came to Manchester City. Last season that was missing. It's back this season. So what I want to see from Newcastle United is matching their intensity. If we don't match their intensity, they're just going to pull us apart like they did against Liverpool. And there's 3 other reasons why Manchester City have picked up form from last season. Actually, fuck it. Let's do 4. 4 reasons why Manchester City have picked up form. Pep Guardiola is starting to perfect the art of fast breaks because only Manchester United have had more shots from fast breaks this season than Manchester City. Now, at the beginning of the season, in an interview with TNT Sports, Pep Guardiola acknowledged the game was becoming more transitional. And what he said was, today in modern football, the way Bournemouth, Newcastle, mentioned Pep Guardiola likes our style. Brighton and Liverpool play. He said modern football is not positional anymore, and he kept referring back to his positional play based on possession football. Now, I will make that diagram bigger because it seems like to me Pep Guardiola is trying to react with football instead of being the pace setter for football. But is that true? Is he just going back to his old ways? Now, as you can see from the graphic, Pep Guardiola came to Manchester City in 2016. And that was the most direct he's ever been. Since then, he's become more slow and intricate, basing his game around more possessional play. But this season has been different. Manchester City have been far more transitional. So it seems to me that Pep Guardiola and Manchester City have learned from last season. So I do expect Manchester City to come and play around the back, but I do expect them to be a lot more quick and direct in transition moments. And I'm going to break down exactly the tweak that Pep Guardiola has made to get the best out of Erling Haaland and Jeremy Doku. So what I'm trying to say is last season there was a blueprint on how to beat Manchester City, and they actually suffered their worst season under Pep Guardiola. But Pep Guardiola, he's a tactician. He is a genius when it comes to getting the best out of his team and overcoming adversity. We're just 11 games into the Premier League season, and already Manchester City have had less possession than their opponent 4 times, which is very unusual for a Pep Guardiola side. So their willingness to give up possession proves that they're going a little bit more direct than usual, and the statistics prove it. We've seen what they did earlier on in the season away to Arsenal. Manchester City do not sit in a low block, but they did that to be more direct. And in fact, the goal Erling Haaland scored only took 8 seconds. That was actually the quickest transitional goal under Pep Guardiola since he's arrived at Manchester City. Let me just make that graphic bigger for you because this is all the teams in Europe's top 5 leagues, and it shows the amount of times they're trying to counter-attack to attack using positional play. And if I circle where Manchester City are, as you can see, they're more counter-attacking than they are positional. If I circle where Newcastle United are, they're more positional than counter-attacking. So that graphic there just proves everything we've been seeing this season. Eddie Howe is now trying to control a little bit more. He's trying to have possession more. It's all about positional attacks rather than counter-attacking. And I actually don't think it suits our style. I think we need to go back to counter-attacking teams, being more direct in transitional moments. In the analogy I use when we come up against bigger teams, why we're better against bigger teams than those lesser teams. I hate using those phrases, but for this video I will. Is because against those lesser teams, let's say, we have more of the ball. We don't know what to do with the ball. What we do know what to do is break quickly. Now, I understand why, because we're adding in the Champions League games, so he wants to be less intense in some games, but it's taken away everything that's built him and got him to this position. So just going back to Manchester City before we get on to Newcastle United, because there is some statistics that I found fascinating. Manchester City ranked top for touches this season in the Premier League, but they actually ranked 4th for possession. So that goes to tell you that they are more direct. They like having the ball, but they don't keep it like they used to. Now, this season, Manchester City have found a similar problem like Newcastle United. They don't create as much away from home than they do at home. When it comes to the home XG table, Manchester City sit top. But if you move it to the away XG table, Manchester City sit 8th. Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Man United, Bournemouth, Brighton, Crystal Palace have all created more opportunities than Manchester City away from home. Now, what I found fascinating, I honestly enjoyed doing it, is breaking down the tactical tweak that Pep Guardiola has made to get the best out of the team that he's got and to stop being so vulnerable in transition moments. Manchester City last season used to push their fullbacks very high. Their fullbacks almost created a line of 4 on the opposition's defensive line. Now, for that reason, Manchester City were getting caught out in transition moments. So the little tweak has not only got the best out of them defensively, but it's also brought the best out of Jeremy Doku. So the one tactical tweak has changed the whole dynamics of Manchester City. What they've done now is, instead of their fullbacks going on the attacking line, they now sit on the midfield line, and there is a purpose for it. So Manchester City now have Ryan Cherky coming inside and Jeremy Doku coming inside for one reason, and that reason is to make the fullbacks jump. And once you make a defender jump out their line, it creates space for somebody to exploit. So if we move it on, when Nico O'Reilly receives a ball, it makes Bradley Connor go towards a ball. That opens up space for Jeremy Doku to exploit. And this is why Jeremy Doku is receiving in space time and time again. Pep Guardiola has now given the freedom to Jeremy Doku to move inside and attack that inside channel. And that one tweak has just completely changed the dynamics of the way Manchester City play. Now, another tweak that they've done is Bernardo Silva will almost play in between the centre-backs. Same with Nico Gonzalez. That allows their attacking players to advance forward. So the most important players in our team against Manchester City will be the fullback, because they've got a decision to make. Do I go towards their fullback and close the ball down? If I do that, it's going to leave space in behind for Jeremy Doku. Or do I hold my shape, let the fullback have the ball, and keep the line nice, tidy, and compact? And I honestly think if we can stop Manchester City creating that sequence, you can almost, and I say almost because Manchester City tend to find a way. And when they've got Erling Haaland in their team, you always know they've got a chance of scoring. But stopping that right channel, that left channel, you'll almost stop Manchester City breaking on you. Now, just to sum up everything I've been saying about Manchester City, in their 3-0 win against Manchester United, they only had 45.3% possession. Again, that is very unheard of for a Pep Guardiola side. And in fact, they've had less than 50% of the ball as many times already this season than they have in the previous 5 seasons. We all know Manchester City have got quality all over the pitch. Jeremy Doku is averaging the most offensive duels in the world this season. Then you've got the likes of Oscar Bob, Ryan Cherky, Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden, Erling Haaland. The list goes on and on and on. There's individual brilliance all over Manchester City's team, but when it comes to Erling Haaland, this guy is a goal machine. Erling Haaland has scored in 18 of his 20 games this season. He's also scored 16 goals in 8 qualifiers for Norway, and he's a scorer of all types of goals. He just needs one moment. Look at his record. 99 Premier League goals in 108 appearances, 29 goals in 27 appearances for Salzburg, 86 goals in 89 appearances for Dortmund, 55 goals in 48 appearances for his country. Erling Haaland is a monster. But the beauty about Erling Haaland, and I think there's an art in strikers, because strikers need to be the most patient players on the pitch. And the difference Erling Haaland has brought to Manchester City, this team, he just consistently stretches defenses. Players need to compromise to benefit the team. Erling Haaland has no interest getting involved in the play. In fact, Erling Haaland is averaging the least touches per 90 than any player in the Manchester City team, and that includes a goalkeeper. That is insane for a striker, but yet he's scoring bundles of goals. It's all about movement, anticipation, and striking when it's hot, and that is the brilliance of Erling Haaland. Like, literally nobody does it like him. Now, how do I think you stop Erling Haaland? Well, it's easier said than done, but if you look over his time when he hasn't scored, it's always when defenders get aggressive with him or tight with him, don't give him any space. So I want Malik Chow just to be dirty with him. Use the dark arts of football, get him flustered, nip him when he's walking past you, stand on his toes, give him a little nudge every time he's walking past him. Gabriel of Arsenal, the centre-back, does this brilliantly. This is why they always battle, because it puts Erling Haaland off his game. And do you know what? I'm going to say it. This is something I want Nick Valdemada to bring into his game. You don't always need to get involved in play. I just want him to understand the movements and patterns of play, understand and learn when to stretch a game, Again, you don't need to always drop deep. Players need to compromise their game depending on the profiles around them. So our wingers need to do better in understanding when Nick Voldemada drops deep, but Nick Voldemada also needs to do better in understanding just when to pin the centre-backs back, when to just open up the game a little bit to allow our midfielders more time and space on the ball. Because at the minute, when our midfielders receive the ball, they're instantly pressed. We don't have those technically gifted midfielders. Well, we do, but we don't. But let's be brutally honest, everybody in Newcastle United needs to do better, whether that be midfielders, wingers, strikers. Everybody in Newcastle United needs to up their game, intensity-wise and belief. The way you beat Manchester City is by being brave. If you just consistently just sit backwards, eventually it's inevitable they will find the back of the net. So when it comes to Newcastle United, let's look at our injury updates, because Eddie Howe has already said it's touch and go whether Anthony Gordon will be fit. So he will face a late fitness test and the results will identify whether he's fit enough to play. Tino Livramento, the game has probably come a little bit too soon for him. Now, Lewis Hall is interesting because we all know Dan Burn is suspended. Lewis Hall started for England under 21s. He also came on and finished the game for England under 21s. And he's also had beautiful cameos for us. Now, I said earlier, our most important players are our fullbacks. So for me, Lewis Hall has got to be on that pitch, especially with Tino Livramento not available. And that, my guys, will just add some much needed dynamism to our left-hand side. Look at Jeremy Doku since Nico O'Reilly's come in. Nico O'Reilly has that athleticism, so that allows Jeremy Doku to play his natural game. At the minute, we're not seeing that with Newcastle United. And as soon as that athleticism comes back, I'm not saying the overall performance is going to improve, but will undoubtedly look more dangerous. And then Yohan Wissa, well, I don't even know what's going on with him, but it is a game too soon for Yohan Wissa. So how did Newcastle United beat Manchester City? Well, if you watch Manchester City, they're very cautious at the opening starts of the games. So you've got to be brave enough to get in their face, overturn the ball, and catch them in their own half. Because if you do that, you've got a greater opportunity of scoring. And I've already mentioned this one throughout the video, deny them their favourite zone. Their attack can hurt you in many different ways, but City like to exploit the left half space and the right half space this season. Now, what they did brilliantly against Liverpool is at first, City were playing dead narrow, so that made Liverpool change their press. So Liverpool started to become dead narrow. Then as soon as Liverpool become dead narrow, City started to widen up the game. So their ability to manipulate your press and change their dynamics so quickly is absolutely incredible. So I'm not saying this game's going to be easy, because it's definitely not. Now, because City have started to play more narrow and try to stretch a game vertically rather than width-wise, there's a lot of space behind their fullbacks. So what we need to do is go back to what we're good at, being good in transitions, being direct, being brave in possession, get runners in and around Nick Voldemada. Germany proved how to get the best out of Nick Voldemada. You get runners around him, and then once you get Nick Voldemada in and around that penalty box, he has got excellent movement. So we need to supply him more service. But the beauty about having Lewis Hall at left back, he's now going to offer you that width. That allows our left midfielder to come inside, and that will give Nick Voldemada more support in possession. But again, the blueprint is there on how you beat Manchester City is being brave, being direct in transition moments, and give Nick Voldemada the support that he needs, because I'm sick of time and time again then seeing Nick Voldemada isolated. For Germany, did you see those goals he scored? They were classic number 9 goals. Excellent movement in and around the box. First time finishes. He didn't even need to get involved in the play. And I want to see Newcastle United bring that out in Nick Voldemada at St. James's Park. Because yes, he's very good at dropping deep and linking up play, but he's also got that decisiveness in and around the box. And he's proven that with Germany. So he might not have the pace of an Alexander Isak, but if we can get the ball in the final third, he needs to concentrate on getting in between the posts, and that will probably get the best out of somebody like Jacob Murphy, because then he's got a target to hit. But we do absolutely need more from our wingers, and that is me being brutally honest. Technically, tactically, we need more from them. We need more energy. And now our wingers need to give Manchester City fullbacks something to worry about, because if we don't give them anything to worry about out wide, that means you're not pushing their fullbacks backwards, and they're consistently going to be in and around that halfway line creating overloads. So you've got to get them running back towards their own goal. Because I'll say it and I'll say it again, movement kills in football. How will Newcastle United likely line up? Well, this is what I think Eddie Howe will do, and I'm basing this off Anthony Gordon being injured. Now, there's one in there that I think I want to see, and that is Aaron Ramsdale. I want to see Aaron Ramsdale in goal. Goalkeepers all of them are very good shot stoppers, but what Aaron Ramsdale brings differently is that ability to beat the press. Sometimes in football, you need to beat that first line. You need to hit your wingers early. Nick Pope doesn't give us that. And against a team like Manchester City, who look to suffocate you and press you aggressively, sometimes you need to miss out that line. And personally, I think Aaron Ramsdale deserves an opportunity. But then I think Trippier at right back, Malik Chow, Sven Botman, Lewis Hall at left back, Sandro Bruno, and I do think he's going to start with Joe Linton just for that physicality. Would I start with Joe Linton? Probably not, but I do think Eddie Howe will. Jacob Murphy on the right, Nick Valdemara up front, and Harvey Barnes on the left. But Eddie Howe also said that there will be either personnel, system, or tactical tweaks to be made. He came out and actually said something's got to change. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see us play with a back five. I hope we don't, but I wouldn't be surprised. So the way this season's going, the form Manchester City are in, the form Erling Haaland is in, if you offered me a 1-1 draw right now, I'd probably take it. But look, I want to hear your thoughts. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment in the below of your thoughts. And there's only one last thing to say. Away the lads.